So today I wanted to talk a little bit about female pleasure and basically actually how to make pussies feel really, really amazing. So whether you have a pussy, you love a pussy, whatever it is, this one is for you. So I know there's a lot of guys out there who think that they understand about female pleasure, they understand about sex, and certainly we're fed and we're given a lot of information about it. So, Nanjar, tell me, how did you learn about sex? What was the education that you had? How did you learn about it? Because one of the problems that our culture has is that for a very long time, thousands of years, in fact, certainly when we're talking about European culture, there's been a lot of repression of knowledge of sex. So if we look at ancient cultures, people talked about sex. Hey, Tushar. In ancient cultures, people would talk about sex the same way we would tell our children how to fry an egg. It wasn't considered an embarrassing, shameful thing to do. It was just considered normal that you should teach your kid about sex. When the church, I guess we could say, or when patriarchy started to repress sexuality, they also started to try to keep the various aspects of sex, sexual arousal, sexual pleasure, sexual intimacy, orgasms, and so on, secret. Now, when we look at like an ancient culture like Taoism, there's a very, very intricate understanding of sex, understanding about how sex is not just actually even about us feeling pleasure, that it's a very, very important part of health. It's an important part of keeping, obviously keeping a connection, keeping a relationship together. It's even essential for creativity. And in fact, the way we have sex and our relationship with our own sexual energy is affects essentially like every part of our lives. So the ancient Taoists knew that it was really, really important. And in fact, they had books that were kept, in the room of almost practically every couple that was explaining exactly how to make love, how to have sex. And it was considered pretty important for the whole life and health, and also even the health of the health of the whole community, the mental health, how people had sex. Now, the first thing, and I notice I've got a request there from someone, I'm naked. As me, I think I'd get in trouble there on I think I'll get in trouble here on Instagram if I do that. And yeah, interesting question. Will you add me or not? So what do we do with it? Because most of us, we're kind of used to, we get a bit of sexual energy and we're like, whoa, okay, what are we going to do with it? And very often we need to run off and pleasure ourselves, or oh, my audio is still gone, or it's come back. Audio still working or not? Tell me, because I might have to go off and start again if it's not working. Oh, I'm back. Woohoo! I'm back. So, what do we do when we feel that first sort of arousal buzzing of sexual energy between our legs, you know? And this is something we're kind of taught, you know, it's naughty, it's inappropriate. There's somehow something bad about feeling this arousal energy. And what this causes us to do is we kind of like tense and squeeze it down into our genitals, where it just kind of causes very often this kind of overwhelming feeling. And I find it's very similar. Actually, I wrote on Facebook, I think yesterday on Facebook, I wrote about anger, and it's kind of similar that very often we feel kind of angry and we're like, oh my God, I'm angry. And it's almost like we get angry at the anger and we try to repress it. And then it starts sort of rising up into this kind of force we can't really deal with. And it's very much similar with sexual energy, because this is a strong, powerful energy that it really wants to go somewhere. It really wants to do something. And the natural way, if we look at both Taoism and Tantra, the natural thing for that sexual energy to do is basically to rise up our bodies. But when we're having this kind of Christian sort of thing of, you know, feeling the horny, trying to shut it down because we've been told the flesh is sin for so many generations, we're stopping that energy from moving. And when that energy doesn't want to move, it kind of gets a little bit like when you know, try to block up literally like a fountain that's naturally coming out of the earth, like a source of water, and pressure starts coming. Or even like, you know, if you put your hand over a tap that's running, the water will probably just all squirt out down the sides. So it's really important to actually start to understand and know what to do with that sexual energy. Because of course, if we squeeze it, you know, we'll get that frustrated feeling. At the same time, we all know, you know, we're living, you know, in the kind of in the trail end of a civilization that's taught us, you know, for so many generations, the sexual energy is like this kind of like sinful thing. So you know, because we have this kind of like toxic relationship in general with the sexuality, when it starts to rise up, we very often will, you know, if we just let it go, it can kind of start going somewhere where we don't really want it to go, that can even get us in trouble. And we don't want that to happen as well. So first of all, it's really essential to start practicing feeling and experiencing the sexual energy on our own at home, and not doing anything with it, you know, not trying to make ourselves come, not, you know, I mean, I just love to lie down, do deep breathing, and start feeling the sexual energy, and start inviting it into my body, inviting it up into my heart, and then feeling it actually coming into my cells and sort of spreading through my body. And it gives me great practice for when I'm with my partner, because then I've got used to just raising up the energy, feeling it in my body, so that when we are together, we can also be conscious about the way in which that we are sort of connecting together, basically. So starting once you've got this sexual energy moving through your body, and I think I wrote a post like this morning. I hope people have read it. If not, do go and check out that post, because I'm talking about the way you know, you probably know, like, I'm a big criticizer of the lube industry. The lube industry makes over $1 billion per year. And most of this is completely unnecessary. Not to say there's the odd person that maybe has a problem that some kind of lubricant might be necessary, but then coconut oil is the best thing that you can use. All these different kinds of fancy lubes just contain chemicals that can really cause problems actually to the woman's internal part, you know, because if you wouldn't put it in your mouth, you shouldn't put it in your vagina anyways, you know. But the fact is that, you know, why are millions and billions of women not getting wet properly? And it's because what they need to get aroused isn't there. Now, men and women, we're different, we're opposites, right? But there's something, I think, in nature that's very miraculous and perfect about us, that we actually can complement each other personally. So male sexual energy does tend to build up very, very fast. So if you look at, like, apparently the average porn movie is literally a couple of minutes, if that long. Yeah. Whereas women, it's quite well known that we may take several hours to get ready to orgasm, you know, whereas the average man will probably go 3 times, come, pass out, be like, oh my God, that was so amazing. And the woman's just like, what did you just do? You know, but when we learn to bring those energies together, and when we as the woman actually learn to slow the man down and the man learns to slow down, it's like he opens up to have a completely new experience of himself. When he learns to sit with that energy, hold that energy, and connect with her on the level of the energy, which is a much lower, slower vibration than his. And if anyone there has actually ever experienced tantric sex, you know, you go very, very slow, you start breathing, and you basically start to feel your energy, and you might just sit there looking at each other eye to eye, and that's all you do for the tantric sex. But the point is, you don't need the ejaculation, you don't need the release, yeah, as most people think that sex is just about this release of frustration, which of course, when that's what we're doing, when that's what's happening, is like we're just missing out on, you know, 90% of the bliss, and we're just reducing it to something that's quite just a bit of a letdown, really, to be honest, when you actually know what sex is really all about. So now, getting back to what I want to be talking about here today, is I want to be talking about how to make a pussy happy, how to really bring a vagina to its most ultimate pleasure. And for you as guys, how do you get her to get like really, really wet? And I was writing about this in the post this morning. Hopefully you read that, because what I said is you need to take control of your energy, because this is a magic thing. This is like a thing about magic, you know? So take control of your energy, fill your whole body with it, fill your heart with it. From your heart to your soul, it comes up into your eyes, and you can then start to share this sexual energy from your heart, from your soul, from your eyes across to her. And this starts to basically wake up the energy inside of her, so that she starts to feel that arousal feeling, like these little sparkles, a bit like champagne bubbles inside her, where she's starting to just feel like super aroused and super turned on. Now, loads of women are used to literally the guy always wants it quicker than them. They're always getting like, just finding sex is quite a letdown, because it's always like some guy just desperate for, you know, getting his tension out of his body. You know, many women will even not have like really experience ever having sex that actually goes at the pace that's right for them. Yeah, it was crazy, you know, when you think about this. And so the first thing you can do is just learn, yeah, and it doesn't matter like how long she takes, learn to arouse the energy, play with the energy, dance with the energy, and essentially start pulling her into this dance with you. Because if you haven't done it energetically at the beginning, and then you go into the physical, the energy will never really be there. So the sex will become like a bit of a disappointment, basically. So once you start creating that connection, and the tip is, you know, that we need to feel that heart, our own heart, full of self-love. And the best way to grow that is by feeding it with that sexual energy that normally would be stuck down there as we're feeling frustrated. But bring the sexual energy up into the heart, and from the heart bring it up into the eyes, and start connecting and just letting that energy spread into your aura, and just sit there in it. And the more that she's getting aroused, and she'll be like, oh, this is unusual. Normally the guy is, you know, all in a rush for it, and so on. And it's a very special thing actually for a woman to experience the guy, you know, slowing down and so on. But the idea is you've got to make her want it. You've got to make her want it more and more and more. So she's gagging for it, and then she will be almost just oozing and lubricating herself, you know. Now, I know that you read just about any sex coach, and they're telling you the clitoris this, the clitoris. I even saw this joke that, you know, a Halloween costume to get men avoiding you, and it was like a clitoris, right? Okay, in reality, men aren't there trying to avoid clitorises or trying to avoid giving women pleasure. I mean, most men try very hard to touch the clitoris, which isn't always what most what women want, you know, and often they do it in quite a rough, clumsy way because nobody really is talking about how do you do it. And in a moment, I'm going to be showing you how to do it, and I'm going to be using a technique from ancient Taoism that I'm going to give you guys to go off and practice yourself at home. So, so it's a myth that only the clitoris feels pleasure. Sure, there's a nerve called the pudendal nerve that goes into the clitoris, and it is quite capable of a very like intense feeling. But the entire vagina, every millimeter of the vagina, of the vulva, and so on, is capable of pleasure. So the labia, for example, this is a part of women that is sadly very, very much neglected. In fact, if you look on porn, you're going to normally see vaginas without labias, vulvas without labias. And there's a big trend actually for women to even get their labias removed, which I think is quite tragic because there's this whole thing like in Taoism and Tantra that we understand when we're doing this very, very slow techniques and the woman is really getting aroused to the point where she's ready for the penetration, the labia kind of start opening up and the whole feeling and texture and sort of shape of the vagina starts to open. Now, in Taoism and in Tantra, it's actually recommended not to touch the clitoris, right? Which sounds crazy, right? Because everyone's saying the clitoris, the clitoris, the clitoris. You don't know where the clitoris is. Men don't know where the clitoris is. I don't think there's many men out there that don't know where it is. But the point is, it's not actually the key to female pleasure. So I mentioned there's a nerve called the pudendal nerve. It comes from your spine, your sacrum, around the back, around the anus, and it goes to the clitoris. And this nerve gets activated when we are tensing. Okay. Now, the other nerves, which serve the inside of the vagina, get activated when we are relaxed. You can see the obvious problem because having a clitoral orgasm and clitoral stimulation causes us to tense. So you can see now why so many women are saying, you know, they don't feel anything inside. They don't feel anything anywhere except the clitoris. And it's amazing how ancient people way back when, thousands and thousands of years ago, actually knew this. And they said insects don't go for the clitoris. Obviously, the clitoris is perfectly placed for my hand, any woman's hand, to touch it. And it can be great for stress relief, relaxation, feels amazing. But it's really important to understand if you want those deep internal orgasms, you really need to be able to relax, and touching the clitoris is actually not good for that. Now, spices. That's my dog. Okay, so come on, you gonna say hello? Hey guys, here's a little cutie. Go on, stop attention seeking. So, right, now we're going to do a lesson, okay? And I want guys to go home, to take this home and to go off and start practicing it. So this is actually an ancient Chinese, ancient Taoist technique for how to practice playing with pussies. And what I've got here is a block of tofu, right? And in the old days in China, before a man was going to get married, he would be presented with a block of tofu and he'd have to start practicing. Now, I actually think this is a hard block of tofu, but this was all I could find in the health food shop. In ancient China, they would use a very, very soft kind of tofu. But the idea being that you practice going with your fingers and you practice touching and you practice the stimulation on the tofu. So let's look at a few different techniques to practice now, right? Now, stroking up and down is really great. So for those of you starting, we're learning how do you touch vaginas. We're getting an idea, right? Instead of the average guy, the way the average guy grabs a clitoris, if they grab the tofu like this, they would probably destroy the block, right? The idea being you use your fingers and you try to practice touching, right? So this is a great, great movement. And when you catch that space right in between the inner and the outer labia and you move up and down like this, it's an absolutely incredible sensation. And I definitely recommend, like, get this tofu, bring it home and start to practice. And when you're with your beloved, you're looking at her vulva, just get it there in front of you and start to look at it and start to really like experience and notice the anatomy. It can help to get like a diagram on the internet and see where's the outer labia, the inner labia, and start touching around the labia. So for example, you can go inside the labia and you can start going like this, up and down inside the labia. And when you touch this tofu, you really get the feeling of how it's perfect actually to it's perfect to practice. Because if you go too hard, it's like you start kind of making a little dip in it, you know. But when you just slide like this, and this is all that a vagina needs, this kind of touching. And using this tofu to practice how to actually stimulate a vagina, I think one of the great things about it is it really encourages and gets you to actually understand how effective like gentle and slow touching can be. And most of these nerves, they're going to activate when the touch is slow and when the touch is actually very gentle. It's kind of like if you go in and you squeeze, it sort of shut things down. And you can practice this even yourself on your hand. You can notice you feel much more doing this than doing that, you know, because this is not really a sensual, pleasant feeling. Whereas when you touch your hand like this, so if you're watching now, just touch your hand and have a little play with it. And it's quite amazing even to do this up the whole length of the arm, because then you're really getting the feeling that as you move up and down your arm, you actually have really different sensations all over your arm. And it's similar with the vagina. In fact, every sort of almost like centimeter or even less millimeter, the feeling, the sensation changes. So I definitely recommend go and get that tofu and start practicing. So for those of us who just joined, so those of you who's just joined rather, I have a block of tofu here and I'm practicing how I might touch a vagina on the tofu. And you get a good idea, because if you push hard, your hand just kind of starts to make holes in it. Whereas if you go gently, and this kind of touch, and even going really slow, really starts to wake up that energy and gives her a lot of sensations. And a lot of women may feel they don't really feel anything inside the vagina, that they don't feel anything, you know, maybe anywhere except the clitoris. They don't get much pleasure. But the thing is that when the woman starts to actually get that experience of slow, initially, of course, she's going to have to change the way she's connecting with her body, and she's going to have to relax. But once she starts experiencing that, once she starts relaxing, it will really start changing. And it's said that statistics show 80% of women are not having an orgasm from basically from sex, you know, where you think, wow, if that was 80% of men not having orgasms, I bet there'd be like non-orgasm centers set up all over the world, billions being invested into finding out why these men weren't having orgasms, but there's not much being done about why women aren't having orgasms. And some people are even saying, well, it's just normal, it's just the way that women are. But of course, we as Taoists know that this is blocked energy, and also that women don't have to be like this. They don't have to live without experiencing orgasmic energy. But a lot of it is about relaxing, loosening up the body, and experiencing like a kind of touch which encourages the relaxation. And that a very important part of it is actually to for men who are listening to learn to really respect her speed, respect her boundaries, not to kind of always bearing in mind as guys that the woman is most likely going to be warming up slower than you, and just take the time, let her set the pace. And what you're going to actually end up finding happens is that actually you as the guy, when your experience of your sexual energy starts to slow down, it's absolutely mind-blowing. It's like something like inside your brain literally just opens up, you know, and she will open up too in a way that you maybe have never experienced before. So to sum this all up, slow and gentle, it's really the key to getting the most sensation out of sex, the longest, best orgasms, and also getting her to like really open up and have amazing, incredible, powerful orgasms as well. So, is there, before I finish now, has anyone got any questions they want to stick in the chat there for us? Yeah, and someone's just put, most women don't open up. They won't communicate their needs. That's because they don't feel safe with you. So if women aren't opening up, that's a sign for you to step back and start to put yourself in a space where she can feel safe. I mean, I speak to a lot of women who just say, I don't like what he's doing down there, but I don't say anything because I'm afraid he's going to get offended or hurt or upset. And also, we as women, we really need to actually step into our power. Uh, and we need to also tell guys, like, no, you know, if he wants to have sex and you don't, say no. And guys, also listen to your own bodies. Don't feel you need to just get into sex there just because you think that someone's going to think you're not a man or whatever. Guys need to slow down as well. And I think guys very often put pressure on themselves to perform, and don't do that, because sex is not about performance. And I love this question, Taz Ike, which part of the vagina should we mainly focus on with the slow touch? I actually am going to say exactly the opposite that 90% of sex coaches are going to say, which is anything but the clitoris. So the idea is to explore. Of course, there's certain tantric techniques, and feel free to like DM me if you want some more information about these. But yeah, the whole of the vagina. So the inner labia is great, you know, internal parts. Now, just to mention, now that I've just said internal parts, and it's really important with all these techniques to actually go in there, go like really, really slow, and allow the penetration to happen in such a way that she's actually pulling you inside, because that's one of the really cool things that happens when a woman is given enough time and the right kind of stimulation to really get properly aroused, is that literally like her whole kind of vagina will start opening up for like a flower, and the muscles will do this thing that actually pulls you inside. So yeah, I mean, you know, personally I would say the labia, the G spot, the K spot, the A spot, these are all great, you know, but I think it all needs slow touch, and you can communicate with her, ask her what she likes, and then you can start to sort of understand what exactly she likes and what she's into. Organized with Narinda, been following this page for a short while, learned a lot. Glad to hear that. So I say not to touch the clitoris at all. So when it comes to lovemaking, you're planning to have like internal intercourse. According to Taoism and Tantra, you shouldn't touch the clitoris, right? Now, when you look at this from a Western science perspective, there's a different nerve going to the clitoris than going to the internal vagina. The clitoral nerve, called the pudendal nerve, is activated through tensing. So if the woman is basically tensing up, right, she's going to have her one clitoral orgasm, but because she's tense, those internal nerves aren't really going to be working. So it's really important to basically get her deeply relaxed, and you're not going to help with that relaxation process by touching her clitoris, basically. But that's also a whole thing about the relationship you're creating with her. You know, I mean, there's so many guys that, for example, I was just talking to a friend yesterday who's using a dating app, and she says, well, I meet these guys, we don't have sex. We meet a couple times, we don't have sex, and then they just disappear, you know. And I mean, it's pretty stressful actually for both men and women to have sex so quickly and to not take that time. And I know, yeah, culture is pushing us to do it so fast, to all get with each other so fast, but take that time, slow things down, get her into a place where she really, really feels comfortable. Because certainly I know that men feel so much pressure on themselves to perform, and we as women, we feel under so much pressure that we're constantly having guys try to push us into sex we're not ready for, and then kind of ghosting us if we don't do it. You know, I mean, this friend, she's actually having treatment for like PTSD because of just her experience on like a dating app. So it's really important to, you know, understand that we are souls, and when we're talking about sexuality, we're talking about the deepest aspect of ourselves and of another human being. And if we're not slowing down, we're not taking the time, we're pushing in any way something onto another person or ourselves, which we or the other person is not like 1,000% yes, I want this, we're causing some kind of like emotional, psychological, spiritual, energetic damage to ourselves and to that other person. So it's very important to just really, really slow things down, take things slowly, and really allow that energy to build up. And when we do that, when that energy, that sexual energy really starts building up in ourselves and in our partnership, we really start to enjoy and to experience much, much deeper layers of pleasure. And I notice I'm having like loads of new people just showing up, and I'm going to stick the recording up. I just want to tell you guys, we've been using Tofu to practice about how to touch a vagina. And I think it's really helpful, actually. Get a Tofu yourself and start touching it and start practicing, because this is a really good example about place to practice how you're going to touch a vagina. Because if I touch too hard, my finger just kind of starts to go in and the tofu starts to tear a bit. But this slow touch, and this feels incredible, I can tell you as a vagina owner, you know, you get in her labia or between the inner and outer labia or inside the labia, and you start doing this, and it's like just mind-blowing the way that the orgasmic energy starts to bubble up your body. So is there any more questions now before, while we're still here? Anything else anybody wants to know about? Yeah, already have a tofu. That's cool. Yeah, I think the tofu does go off after a few days. So remember, you need to keep getting a new one. So, these are my neighbors. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend and do have a check out of the recording. I'm going to stick it right up onto my Instagram, and we were talking all about female pleasure and basically what is the best way to get her juicy and having the most incredible orgasms possible.